When does a person become successful? Now, before you answer, consider this. Most people would tell you that success arrives when you reach the goal, when you cross the finish line, when the bank balance hits a certain number. But here's what's remarkable. That definition, the one almost everyone accepts without question, practically guarantees you'll feel like a failure for most of your life, even if you eventually achieve what you set out to achieve. I'd like to show you a different way of understanding success, one that transforms defeat from a constant companion into something that, properly understood, loses its power to frighten you entirely. And it has been hiding in plain sight. Let me ask you a question, a simple question that may surprise you with its simplicity. And yet, in studying successful people across decades, I've found that the answer to this one question divides humanity into two distinct groups: those who achieve what they set out to achieve, and those who spend their entire lives feeling like failures despite their best efforts. Here's the question. When does a person become successful? Now, before you answer, consider what most people would say. They'd tell you that success arrives when you reach the goal, when you get the promotion, when the business turns profitable, when the bank balance reaches a certain number, when you finally cross that finish line you've been running toward. They believe success is a destination, a place you arrive after the journey is complete. I'd like to tell you about something that most people never learn, and this single misunderstanding about the nature of success is responsible for more abandoned dreams, more depleted motivation, and more lives lived in quiet desperation than perhaps any other error in human thinking. Most people have it exactly backwards. Think of it this way. If you define success as reaching your goal, then you've defined yourself as failing for the entire duration of the journey. Every single day before you arrive at that destination, you are, by your own definition, not yet successful. You are still failing. Now consider what this means in practice. If your goal is to build a successful business, then every day before the business is profitable, you are failing. If your goal is to become financially independent, then every day before you reach that number, you are failing. If your goal is to master a skill, write a book, achieve any worthy aim, then the entire journey, which might take years or even decades, is spent in a state of not yet success. Is it any wonder that so many people give up? Is it any wonder that fear of failure haunts so many capable people? They've defined success in a way that makes failure their permanent condition until the very end. The bigger the goal, the longer they must feel like failures. Ambition becomes punished rather than rewarded. Here's something interesting that most people miss. The fear of defeat that haunts people isn't really about the future, some catastrophe waiting ahead. It's about the present. They feel like failures right now, today, in this very moment, because they haven't yet arrived at some imagined destination. This chronic sense of inadequacy, this weight of not being good enough, yet this is what actually defeats them. Not some future failure, present failure feeling. And here's where the damage compounds. This definition creates what we might call the arrival fallacy, the belief that happiness and fulfillment will arrive when you finally reach the goal. People living under this assumption postpone their sense of accomplishment. They tell themselves they'll feel successful when the goal is reached, when the milestone is hit, when some external condition is satisfied. But observation reveals something troubling. Many people who do reach their goals experience a strange emptiness afterward. The success they expected to feel doesn't materialize, or it fades almost immediately. Why? Because they spent so long in the mindset of not yet successful that they don't know how to feel successful even when the external conditions have been met. They've trained themselves for inadequacy. They've become experts at not arriving. William James, the great Harvard psychologist, observed that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. The attitude that sees non-arrival as failure produces dramatically different results than other possible attitudes. Rollo May, another keen observer of human nature, noted that the opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity. And here's the truth. Most people have conformed to a definition of success that guarantees they will feel like failures for most of their lives. Notice how you feel when you think about your most important goals. Is there a subtle weight of not yet? A sense that success is waiting somewhere in the future, not here in the present? Watch yourself at the end of a productive day. Do you feel successful, or do you feel you haven't quite made it yet? That background feeling of inadequacy, that's the definition at work. It's that simple. But here's what's remarkable. This chronic failure feeling isn't a signal of actual failure. It's a measurement error. What you've interpreted as personal inadequacy is actually a definitional problem. The problem isn't that you're failing. The problem is that you've been measuring wrong. If the conventional definition creates this chronic state of failure, one question becomes urgent. What happens to people who live by it for decades? Let's take 100 people and trace what actually becomes of them. Let me ask you another question. Have you ever wondered what happens to the average person over the course of a working lifetime? Not what we hope happens, not what we assume happens, but what actually observably happens. Let's take 100 people who start even at the age of 25. All of them believe they're going to be successful. You can see it in their faces, the energy, the optimism, the belief that life will work out. They're eager to get started. Do you have any idea what will happen to those 100 people by the time they're 65? The statistics are devastating, and they map precisely onto the definition problem we just examined. By age 65, here's what we find. Only 1 will be rich. 4 will be financially independent. 5 will still be working, not because they want to, but because they have to. And 54, more than half, will be broke, depending on others for life's necessities. Only 5 out of 100 make the grade. Now, why do you suppose that is? These are intelligent people. Many of them work hard their entire lives. They're not lacking in basic ability or opportunity, and yet 95 out of 100 end up either struggling or dependent by the time they reach what should be their golden years. Think of it this way. Consider 100 ships leaving harbor. Those ships, with mapped voyages, with captains, crews, and clear destinations, reach their destinations 9,999 times out of 10,000. But ships without direction, engines running but no course charted, end up as derelicts on deserted beaches or sink entirely. The difference isn't the ship, it's the direction. It's the same with human beings. Now look at those 100 people. Most of them are ships without destinations, drifting wherever the current and wind push them. They react to circumstances rather than creating them. They spend decades waiting for success to arrive rather than recognizing it in progress. Why do 95% fail? We conform. Most of us act like the wrong percentage group, the 95 who don't succeed, because we've absorbed their definition and their patterns. We've accepted without examination a way of measuring success that practically guarantees we'll feel unsuccessful. The 95% share the arrival-based definition of success. Day after day, year after year, they tell themselves, I'll be successful when. They perpetually feel unsuccessful, which depletes their motivation, which produces the very failure they feared. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of inadequacy. Napoleon Hill studied over 500 successful people and found common principles that the majority ignored. The Bible teaches, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. And most people aren't sowing anything deliberately. They're waiting for harvest without planting. They're standing in front of the stove saying, give me heat and then I'll add the wood. That's not how it works. Look around your workplace, your neighborhood, your extended family. How many people seem energized by their direction versus resigned to their circumstances? How many talk about what they'll do someday versus what they're building now? How many have that subtle weight of inadequacy in their eyes, the sense that success is always somewhere else, somewhere in the future? The statistics aren't abstract. They describe observable patterns in the people around you. People hear these statistics and think, but I'm different, I'm working hard. Here's something important to understand. Hard work without direction is the ship with engines running but no course. Effort without the right definition produces activity without progress. The 95% include many hard workers. Hard work is necessary, but it isn't sufficient. The definition you're operating by determines whether your hard work produces the feeling of success or the feeling of failure. And feeling determines behavior over time, and behavior determines outcome. What we're looking at isn't failure as an event, some single moment when everything collapses. It's failure as a process, decades of feeling inadequate that eventually produces the very outcome feared. The question becomes personal. Which group am I tracking toward? And more importantly, what determines which group? If the definition determines the outcome, and most people are operating by a definition that guarantees failure, feeling, then the question becomes urgent. Is there another way to understand success? One that doesn't condemn us to feel inadequate for most of our lives? One that transforms defeat from a constant companion into something that, properly understood, loses its power to frighten us? There is, and it has been hiding in plain sight, confirmed by every great teacher throughout history, embodied by every person who achieved lasting success. Let me show you. Here's the key to understanding success and defeat, and the key to collapsing fear entirely. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Now let me say that again, because these 8 words will change everything if you truly understand them. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Notice what this definition does not say. It does not say success is reaching your goal. It does not say success is achievement. It does not say success is the completion of some journey. It says success is the progressive realization, the gradual unfolding, the ongoing movement toward a worthy ideal. What does this mean in practical terms? It means that if you have a worthy goal, something that genuinely matters to you, and you are making progress toward it, you are successful right now. Not when you arrive, not when you finish, not when others recognize you, not when the numbers align. Right now, in this very moment. Think of a ship crossing the ocean. When is that ship successful? Only when it reaches port? That would be absurd. The entire voyage, the storms weathered, the miles traveled, the steady progress across the sea would count for nothing until the moment of arrival. But that's not how a sailor sees it, is it? The ship is fulfilling its purpose every nautical mile of the journey. It is being exactly what it was designed to be, a vessel in motion toward its destination. The ship is successful the moment it leaves harbor with a clear course plotted and a crew working to maintain that course. The arrival is simply the culmination of a success that was happening all along. It's the same with human beings. A success is the school teacher who is teaching because that's what she wanted to do, who shows up each day to shape young minds, who works to improve her craft. That teacher is successful right now, not when some future milestone is reached. A success is the entrepreneur building a business, learning from setbacks, solving problems, serving customers better each month. That entrepreneur is successful right now regardless of what the bank balance says. A success is anyone who has a worthy ideal and is moving toward it. This is not positive thinking. This is not self-deception. This is a clear-eyed understanding of what success actually means. The progressive realization of a worthy ideal, progress, forward movement, the gradual unfolding of something valuable. That's success. And by this definition, defeat as we commonly understand it becomes almost impossible. Because as long as you're moving toward your goal, as long as you're learning and growing and making progress, you cannot be failing. A setback is not defeat, it's information. A rejection is not failure, it's redirection. An obstacle is not proof that you've failed, it's an opportunity to demonstrate that you're still in the game, still moving, still progressing. Here's why fear of defeat collapses under this definition. You can't fear not reaching the destination if reaching it isn't what makes you successful. The fear of failure depends on failure being possible at every moment. Under this definition, failure only occurs when you abandon the goal entirely, not when you haven't reached it yet, not when you experience setbacks, but only when you stop progressing altogether. There's nothing left for fear to attach to. Throughout history, all the great teachers have understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote about finding fulfillment in the quality of one's actions, not their outcomes. Emerson declared that the reward of a thing well done is to have done it. The scriptures teach that as ye sow, so shall ye reap. The emphasis always on the sowing, the process, the direction of movement. William James recognized that altering the mind alters the life. This isn't a new idea. It's the oldest wisdom, waiting to be rediscovered. Now, I want you to apply this to yourself. Do you have something you genuinely want to achieve? Something that matters to you? Are you making progress toward it, learning, growing, moving forward, even imperfectly? Then you are not waiting for success. You are experiencing it. The weight of not yet successful that you may have carried for years, that weight was based on a measurement error. Success was available to you all along. You just didn't recognize it. But immediately questions arise. Does any progress count? What makes a goal worthy? And how does this actually work in real life when setbacks come, when the bills are due, when others judge you by the old definition? The principle is revealed, but it needs demonstration. Now here's something interesting that contradicts what most people assume. People think that feeling unsuccessful drives harder effort, that the gap between where they are and where they want to be creates motivation. They believe that chronic inadequacy is the fuel that powers achievement. But observation reveals exactly the opposite. People who feel like failures behave like failures. Their energy depletes, their creativity diminishes, their persistence erodes. They conserve rather than create. They protect rather than pursue. They withdraw rather than engage. People who feel successful, who recognize their progress as genuine success, have energy to spare. They work better, longer, and with greater enthusiasm. They recover from setbacks that devastate others. They produce more with more enjoyment. It's like the man who stands in front of the stove and says, "Give me heat, and then I'll add the wood." We've got to put the fuel in before we can expect heat. The internal sense of success is the fuel. The external results are the heat. Most people wait for results to feel successful, but feeling successful is what generates results. The conventional view has cause and effect backwards. Here's the key. Human beings perform according to their self-image. This has been demonstrated so consistently that it qualifies as a law of human nature. Someone who sees themselves as successful in progress behaves as a successful person. They take actions that successful people take. They persist in ways that successful people persist. They recover from setbacks the way successful people recover. Someone who sees themselves as not yet successful, as still failing, still inadequate, still falling short, behaves as a person who hasn't succeeded. They take fewer risks. They quit earlier. They interpret setbacks as confirmation of their inadequacy rather than as information for adjustment. Same circumstances. Different internal frame. Dramatically different results over time. We become what we think about. Think about the paradox most people live with. They believe that when they finally achieve success, they'll feel successful. But the feeling of inadequacy they carry actually prevents the behaviors that would produce external success. They're waiting for the destination to produce the feeling, when actually the feeling is what propels you toward the destination. Watch two people with identical goals. One maintains the progress as success frame. They recognize each day of genuine movement as success. The other operates by arrival as success. They feel inadequate until they reach some external milestone. Over months and years, the first persists where the second quits. The first recovers from setbacks that devastate the second. The first produces more output with more enjoyment. The internal frame predicts the external outcome. William James put it clearly. Human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. The attitude that sees progress as success produces different behavior than the attitude that sees non-arrival as failure. Research on intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation confirms this consistently. People who find satisfaction in the work itself, not just the reward, produce superior performance and persist longer than those who work only for external outcomes. When the work itself feels like success, you do more of it, do it better, and continue doing it longer. Every study of high achievers reveals the same pattern. They found meaning in the process, not just the prize. They experienced the journey as successful, which gave them the energy to continue the journey. Now let me be clear about something. This isn't fake it till you make it, or delusional positivity. The feeling of success must be grounded in genuine movement, not wishful thinking. The daily question becomes, am I actually making progress towards something I actually value? If yes, even if the progress is small, even if the pace is slower than you'd like, then the feeling of success is justified. It's not deception, it's accurate measurement. But genuine movement, however small, justifies the feeling, and the feeling produces more movement, and more movement produces more feeling. It's a cycle that feeds itself in whichever direction you point it. The person who feels unsuccessful produces less. Producing less confirms their sense of inadequacy. The inadequacy produces even less, and the spiral continues downward. The person who feels successful produces more. Producing more confirms their sense of success. The success produces even more, and the spiral continues upward. Same human being, different definition, different trajectory. Your internal frame isn't just about how you feel, it determines what you do. And what you do determines what you achieve. It's that simple. But one major objection remains. What about setbacks? If success is progressive realization, what happens when you're not progressing, when you're going backward, failing, struggling? Does the definition survive contact with reality? Here's the most serious objection to what we've been discussing, and it deserves a thorough answer. What about setbacks? What about when things go wrong? What about genuine failure, the deal that falls through, the project that collapses, the effort that produces nothing? If success is progressive realization, what happens when you're not progressing, when you're going backward, when you're struggling? Let me tell you something which, if you really understand it, will alter how you experience difficulty for the rest of your life. Under the correct definition, a setback is not evidence of failure. It's an episode in a successful progression. It's information that contributes to forward movement. It's part of the success, not opposed to it. This isn't semantic wordplay. This isn't putting a positive spin on negative events. This fundamentally changes how setbacks are experienced, processed, and responded to. Think of the farmer's land. The mind, like farmland, will return what you plant, but the harvest doesn't come immediately. Between planting and harvest are seasons: growth, setback, weather, adjustment, more growth. A drought doesn't mean the farmer is failing at farming, it means farming is happening. The crop that fails teaches what works in this particular soil. The pest that destroys one planting leads to the technique that protects the next. Is the farmer failing during the drought? During the adjustment? During the learning? No. The farmer is farming, and setbacks are part of farming. The question isn't, did this particular effort succeed? The question is, did this contribute to my progression? Under the old definition of success, a setback equals failure, and failure means stop or retreat. The person experiencing the setback feels defeated, depleted, confirmed in their inadequacy. They conserve energy, they protect themselves from further hurt, they withdraw. Under the correct definition, a setback equals information, and information means adjust and continue. The person experiencing the setback asks different questions. What did this teach me? How does this contribute to my understanding? What do I now know that I didn't know before? Same event, completely different response. Every genuine setback teaches something. A rejection reveals what doesn't work, which means it reveals by elimination what might work better. An obstacle develops capacity, the very muscle needed for the next challenge. A failure illuminates the path, showing where not to step on the next attempt. This isn't rationalization. This is how learning actually operates. This is how progress actually happens. Why do some people persist through setbacks that devastate others? Not because they're tougher, not because they have more willpower, because they define setbacks differently. What looks like extraordinary resilience is actually definitional clarity. The biographies of remarkable achievers are catalogs of setbacks. Lincoln's political failures before the presidency, Edison's thousands of experiments before the working light bulb. Every great accomplishment you can name sits atop a mountain of what the conventional definition would call failures. The pattern is consistent. Those who achieve do not avoid setbacks. They define them differently. They see the setback as part of the success, not evidence against it. The scriptures remind us that trials produce perseverance, that difficulty develops the very capacity needed for achievement. Every wisdom tradition understands that growth requires resistance, that strength develops through challenge, that the path to mastery runs through failure. The word failure itself is the problem. Under the correct definition, there's only one thing that constitutes genuine defeat: abandoning the worthy ideal entirely. Not setbacks, Not slow progress, not mistakes, not temporary reversals. Only surrender. And here's what's remarkable about even that. Even surrender can be reversed the moment you begin again. Even the person who has given up entirely on their worthy ideal can restart their progression tomorrow. Yesterday's surrender doesn't prevent today's beginning. The only permanent defeat is permanent surrender, and that's entirely within your control. Think of the last significant setback you experienced. Did you interpret it as evidence you were failing? Notice how that interpretation affected your energy, your next steps, your persistence. Now reframe it. Did that setback teach you anything? Did it contribute to your understanding, your capability, your direction? Did you know something afterward that you didn't know before? Did you develop any capacity you didn't previously have? If so, it was part of your progression, not evidence against it. The fear of setbacks loses its power when setbacks can no longer be equated with defeat. What is there to fear in information? What is there to fear in learning? What is there to fear in an episode within a successful progression? The only thing left to fear is surrender, and that remains within your control. It's that simple. The principle is now established and defended. We've seen what success actually means. We've seen how it works, the mechanism by which the correct definition produces superior results. We've seen how it handles the toughest objection, that setbacks cannot shake it. But a principle understood is different from a principle lived. What changes tomorrow morning? How do you actually apply this in daily life? How do you maintain this perspective when the world around you operates by the old definition? It's time to move from understanding to application. Now here's how this applies to you. Not as a theory, but as something you can do tomorrow morning. The entire transformation we've been discussing reduces to a single daily question. One question, asked honestly at the end of each day, will change your experience of work and life more than any other single practice I could give you. Instead of asking, did I reach my goal? A question guaranteed to produce disappointment most days. Ask instead, did I make progress toward my worthy ideal? That's it. That single question, answered honestly, transforms everything. Now, why do I say that? Because the question you ask determines the answer you get. And the answer you get determines how you feel. And how you feel determines what you do tomorrow. When you ask, did I reach my goal? The honest answer most days is no. You didn't finish the book today. You didn't complete the project. You didn't cross the finish line. And so you feel inadequate. You feel like you're failing. You carry that inadequacy into tomorrow, which depletes your energy for tomorrow's work. But when you ask, did I make progress toward my worthy ideal? The honest answer most days is yes. You wrote 3 pages, you solved 1 problem, you learned something you didn't know yesterday. You served 1 customer better than you served them last week. You moved forward. And so you feel successful. You carry that success into tomorrow, which energizes your work. Same day. Different question, different experience, different trajectory over time. Think of each morning as a ship leaving harbor. The ship that departs knowing its destination and recognizing every mile as progress toward it sails differently than the ship that departs feeling it hasn't arrived anywhere yet. Same ocean, same vessel, completely different experience. Your morning frame, successful in progress versus not yet successful, sets the trajectory for everything that follows. Here's a practice you can start tomorrow. Before your feet hit the floor in the morning, remind yourself of something simple. You have a worthy goal. You're moving toward it. You're successful right now, in this very moment. Not successful someday when, successful now. Then ask yourself, what progress will today's success include? Not what must I achieve today to finally feel successful, but what progress will today's successful work include? The difference is subtle but profound. One question carries the weight of inadequacy, the other carries the energy of success. At night, review differently too. Instead of measuring against a rival, ask, did I move forward today? What did I learn? What small step can I identify? This isn't self-deception. It requires honest assessment. Some days, honestly, you didn't progress. You coasted. You procrastinated. You moved backward. That honest recognition is valuable. It tells you something important. But many days, most days, if you're genuinely pursuing a worthy ideal, You did make progress. You just didn't recognize it because you were measuring against a rival instead of movement. You were asking the wrong question. The daily question shift creates a compounding effect over time. Small progress, recognized as success, compounds. You feel successful today, so you work with energy tomorrow. So you make more progress, so you feel more successful, so you work with more energy. The cycle feeds itself upward. Daily inadequacy, even with small progress, erodes. You feel unsuccessful today, so you work with depleted energy tomorrow, so you make less progress, so you feel more unsuccessful, so you work with less energy. The cycle feeds itself downward. Same effort, different frame, dramatically different long-term outcome. Every system of achievement ever developed includes daily review and daily intention setting. The success literature across decades and cultures emphasizes beginning with the end in mind, reviewing progress, celebrating movement. This isn't new advice, but it's usually implemented with the wrong underlying definition. People set goals in the morning, review at night, but they're measuring against a rival the entire time. The practice drains them rather than energizing them. The definition determines whether daily practice depletes or restores. Now let me tell you something important about making this practical. Don't let this become mechanical, positive thinking that ignores reality. The daily question requires honest assessment. If you ask, did I make progress today? And the honest answer is no, you avoided the work, you distracted yourself, you moved backward, then acknowledge that honestly. That recognition has value. It tells you something about what needs to change. But here's what's remarkable. When you ask the right question honestly, you discover that many days you dismissed as failures actually contained real progress. Progress you didn't notice because you were measuring against the wrong standard. You now have a specific practice, the daily question you can implement immediately, tomorrow morning, tonight, before sleep. The shift from principle to habit becomes clear. Success becomes something you experience daily rather than something you await indefinitely. But what about external pressure? The world still operates by the old definition. Your boss judges by outcomes. Society ranks by arrival. Family and friends ask, have you made it yet? How do you maintain the correct internal frame when everything around you pushes toward the old one? Here's the practical challenge everyone faces. You've understood the correct definition of success, you've seen how it works, you've begun to apply it in your daily practice. But the world hasn't changed. Your boss still judges by outcomes. Your performance review still measures arrival, not progress. Society still ranks people by what they've achieved, not by what they're achieving. Family and friends still ask, have you made it yet? As if success were a destination you either reach or don't. How do you maintain the correct internal frame when everything around you operates by the old definition? Let me tell you something that resolves this apparent conflict entirely. You can participate in external systems, meet metrics, satisfy bosses, achieve outcomes, while operating internally by the superior framework. External compliance does not require internal surrender. Think of a river flowing within its banks. The river conforms to external constraints. It can't flow through mountains. It must follow the terrain. But within those banks, the river maintains its own nature, its own direction, its own force. The banks shape the river's path, but they don't determine whether the river is successfully being a river. It flows regardless. The external world shapes your path. It creates constraints you must work within, but it doesn't determine whether you're successfully progressing toward your worthy ideal. You progress regardless, or you don't. That's determined internally, not externally. Here's the key. The two layers can coexist, and the internal layer actually improves external performance. Externally, you meet requirements. You satisfy metrics. You play the games that must be played. When the boss asks about outcomes, you report outcomes. When the performance review measures results, you deliver results. Internally, you measure by progress. You recognize success in movement. You maintain the correct frame regardless of how others measure you. No conflict exists between these layers. In fact, they reinforce each other. People who feel successful perform better. They have more energy, more creativity, more persistence. The correct internal definition produces better external results, not worse. The person operating by the progress as success definition isn't ignoring external demands. They're actually better equipped to meet them. They work with more energy because they don't feel chronically inadequate. They persist longer because setbacks don't devastate them. They produce more because they're not depleted by constant failure feeling. The internal frame makes you better at the external game, not worse. Here's something else worth understanding. Our rewards will always be in exact proportion to our service. Money, like happiness, is an effect, the result of a cause, and the cause is valuable service. The person focused on progressive realization, on becoming better at serving, on growing their capacity to contribute, is focused on exactly what produces external reward. They're not chasing the reward directly. They're creating the cause that produces the reward. The internal and external align naturally when you understand this. Serving better today than you served yesterday is progress toward a worthy ideal. And serving better is precisely what generates external recognition, compensation, advancement. You're not choosing between internal success and external success. The correct internal definition produces better external results. Now, what about the judgments of others? They'll judge you by the old definition. They'll compare you unfavorably to peers who have arrived at places you haven't. They'll ask why you haven't achieved what they expected you to achieve by now. Here's how to think about this. Others' judgments reflect their measurement system, not reality. You can acknowledge their system, participate in their games, while knowing their assessment is incomplete. Their verdict doesn't determine your success. Your progression does. When your performance review focuses on outcomes, meet those outcomes while knowing that your growth, your learning, your service improvement are the deeper success. The outcomes matter. Meet them. But they don't define you. When others compare you unfavorably to peers who have arrived at places you haven't, recognize the comparison's limitation. Yes, someone else reached a milestone you haven't reached. That's a fact. But that fact doesn't mean they're successful and you're failing. It means they've arrived at a particular destination. You're progressing toward your own. Both can be success. The Stoics understood this profoundly. Marcus Aurelius served as Roman emperor, the ultimate external demands, the ultimate external judgments. And yet he maintained internal clarity about what actually mattered, the quality of his actions, the direction of his growth, the integrity of his progression. He participated fully in the external world, more fully than almost anyone in history, and he operated by internal principles the external world largely ignored. Emerson wrote of self-reliance within society, not withdrawal from it. The great achievers participated fully in the games the world plays while operating by superior principles. Don't use the correct definition as an excuse to ignore external requirements or dismiss feedback. External metrics often contain genuine information. If you're not meeting external demands, that may be telling you something important about your progression. Maybe you're not actually progressing as much as you think. The goal isn't to reject the external world. It's to participate in it without surrendering internal truth. You can play external games without letting them define your experience. You can meet external demands while knowing they're not the ultimate measure. You can hear external judgments while maintaining internal clarity. The apparent conflict between right definition and real world dissolves when you understand this. You don't have to choose. You can work within systems while operating by superior principles and actually perform better because of it. The practice is established. The integration with external reality is clear. But what about the deeper implications? What kind of life becomes possible when defeat loses its power? What opens up when success becomes present rather than future, when fear has been defined out of daily experience? It's time to see the full picture. Let me ask you to consider something you may never have considered before. What would your life look like if you weren't afraid of failure? Not less afraid. Not managing your fear. What if the fear simply wasn't there? Most people can't even imagine this because fear of failure has been their constant companion for so long. It's the background noise of their ambition, always there, always monitoring, always asking, what if you don't make it? What if you fail? What if everyone sees that you couldn't do it? That fear consumes enormous energy. It creates hesitation where action should flow. It limits goals to what seems achievable to avoid the pain of falling short. It transforms the pursuit of worthy ideals into an anxiety-laden test that must be passed or failed. But here's what happens when you truly understand what we've been discussing. The fear doesn't gradually diminish. It collapses because it no longer has anything to stand on. Think about what fear of failure actually is. It's fear of a verdict, the judgment that you have failed. It's fear that at some point, someone, yourself, others, life itself, will pronounce the verdict. You didn't make it. You failed. That verdict is what you fear. Not the setback itself, not the difficulty, not the struggle, the verdict. But if success is progressive realization of a worthy ideal, if you're successful as long as you're genuinely progressing, then the verdict you have failed never arrives. It can't arrive. As long as you're moving toward your worthy goal, learning and growing and serving better, you are succeeding. There's no failure to fear because there's no failure happening. The fear has nothing to attach to. Imagine walking through a dark room, hands out, expecting to hit a wall that you've been told blocks your path. You move slowly, tentatively, fearing the collision. You protect yourself. You hesitate. Then the lights come on. And you see, there is no wall. Never was. The space is open. You can walk freely. The fear was real. The wall was not. Fear of defeat operates exactly the same way. It feels solid. It feels like you're afraid of something real, something that could actually happen. But when you see clearly, when you understand what success actually means, you discover the wall isn't there. What you feared was the verdict failure. That verdict doesn't apply to progressive pursuit of worthy ideals. The fear was real. The defeat was phantom. Now here's what opens when that fear collapses. First, freedom. When fear of failure collapses, you can pursue worthy ideals without the hesitation that stops most people. Not because you're braver than they are, because there's less to fear. The courage isn't in facing the fear. It's in seeing that the fear was based on a misunderstanding. Second, energy. Fear consumes enormous energy, constantly monitoring for threats, protecting against judgment, preparing for the possibility of failure. When fear collapses, that energy becomes available for actual pursuit. You have more to give to your work because less is being consumed by worry. Third, ambition. People often limit their goals to what seems achievable, to avoid the pain of falling short. They aim low because falling short of a high target feels worse than hitting a low one. But without failure, fear, you can aim higher. The journey toward ambitious goals is success, not the arrival at them. Why not pursue something magnificent? Fourth, joy. Pursuit becomes enjoyable rather than anxious. The work itself becomes satisfying rather than merely the means to an end. You can experience the journey rather than merely enduring it while waiting for arrival. Think of something you've held back from pursuing because of fear of failure. Maybe something you wanted for years but never fully committed to because of what might happen if you didn't succeed. Now apply the correct definition. If you began pursuing it, making progress toward it, learning and growing, moving forward, would you be failing or would you be succeeding? Would the verdict failure apply to genuine effort toward a worthy goal, or would the only verdict be progressing? Notice how this reframes everything. The fear was fear of a verdict that wouldn't apply. Every tradition of wisdom ultimately arrives at this insight, that the thing feared often proves illusory upon examination. The Stoics call this seeing clearly. The scriptures speak of truth setting you free. William James recognized that belief creates fact. The belief that failure awaits creates hesitation that produces failure. Remove the belief, remove the hesitation. This doesn't mean all risk disappears or all outcomes are equal. Real consequences exist in the world. If you start a business and it doesn't work, you lose real money. If you pursue a relationship and it doesn't work, you experience real disappointment. But the internal experience of fear, the paralysis, the hesitation, the constant anxiety about the verdict, this collapses when the verdict itself becomes impossible under the correct definition. What remains is clear-eyed assessment of external consequences which you can handle. What disappears is the crushing weight of anticipated judgment, which was never real to begin with. Permission opens, energy releases, possibility expands. With fear collapsed and possibility opened, one question remains. What does this mean for how we live? Not just achieve, but live. What kind of life becomes available when success is present rather than future, when defeat has been defined out of daily experience? The final answer awaits. Let me return to where we began, that simple question that divides humanity. When does a person become successful? You now have the answer that is hidden in plain sight throughout human history, confirmed by every great teacher, exemplified by every person who achieved lasting fulfillment. A person is successful the moment they begin moving toward a worthy ideal. Not when they arrive, not when others recognize them, not when the numbers align, not when the world pronounces them successful. The moment of beginning is the moment of success, because success lives in the going, not just in the getting there. But I want you to understand something even deeper than this. Something that transforms not just how you pursue goals, but how you experience life itself. The fulfillment you're seeking, that sense of having made it, of being enough, of living a successful life, that fulfillment isn't located at the destination. It's woven into the fabric of the journey itself. Every step of genuine progress toward a worthy ideal contains within it the very satisfaction you think you're walking toward. You're not traveling toward fulfillment. You're traveling through it, if you have eyes to see. Think of an acorn. When does an acorn become successful? Only when it finally becomes a mighty oak? That would mean decades of growth were failure. The sprouting, the rooting, the first leaves, the growing trunk, all failure until the final form emerged. That's absurd. The acorn is successfully becoming what it's meant to be from the moment it begins to grow. Every stage of development is success. The magnificent oak is simply the culmination of a success that was happening all along. You are that acorn. You have been succeeding all along if you were growing towards something worthy. The days you thought you were failing, you weren't. The sense of inadequacy that accompanied your efforts, that was the measurement error, not you. This understanding changes not just the future, but the past. You can look back at your life and see it differently now. Times you judged yourself as falling short, you were progressing. Times you felt inadequate, that inadequacy was false, based on a flawed definition. You weren't failing then. You won't be failing tomorrow. As long as you're moving towards something worthy, success is what you're living, not what you're chasing. Here's what this means for how life feels. Under the conventional definition, success is scarce. Only a few can make it. Only the arrivers get to feel successful. Everyone else must wait, must strive, must feel inadequate until they reach some external milestone. Life becomes a competition for limited slots, and most people lose. Under the correct definition, success is abundant. Everyone genuinely pursuing a worthy ideal is successful. Your success doesn't diminish mine. We're all progressing toward different ideals, and there's no limit on how many of us can be successful at once. The competition that dominates conventional thinking dissolves. Under the conventional definition, success lives in the future. I will be successful when life is postponed, satisfaction is deferred. The present is merely the uncomfortable means to a future end. Under the correct definition, success lives in the present. I am successful now, moving toward something worthy. Life is engaged now, satisfaction is experienced now. The present is not a waiting room. It's the place where success actually happens. You stop waiting and start experiencing. As the scripture teaches, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, not in some distant future, but here, now, available to those with eyes to see. Success operates the same way. It's not waiting at the end of the road. It's present in every faithful step along the way. Emerson knew this. A man is what he thinks about all day long. What you think about determines what you become. And what you think about success, whether you experience it now or postpone it until arrival, determines whether you live successfully or merely chase success unsuccessfully. Marcus Aurelius knew it. Fulfillment lives in the quality of action, not in the receipt of reward. Do your work well today, progress toward your ideal, serve better than you served yesterday. That's where fulfillment lives, not in some future recognition that may or may not come. Every wisdom tradition points to the same truth. What you seek is not elsewhere, not later. It's here and now, in the worthy pursuit itself. Now let me be clear about something. This doesn't mean you should stop striving. The definition requires progress, genuine movement toward genuine goals. Present success includes future success through continued progression. Complacency isn't success. Standing still isn't progressive realization. The person who mistakes this understanding for permission to coast has misunderstood entirely. But sustainable, joyful, energized progression, that is the life that was always available. Achievement becomes sustainable because you're not depleting yourself in desperate pursuit of an ever-receding destination. You're moving from success to success, each day building on the last, each moment of progress experienced as what it actually is, success. Fear loses its grip because defeat has been redefined out of daily experience. The phantom wall is gone. You can walk freely. Fulfillment becomes present rather than future, available now rather than promised later, real rather than hoped for. Look at your life right now. Not someday, not when conditions are right now. Do you have a worthy ideal? Something that genuinely matters to you? Something that stretches you, that serves others, that represents your highest aspirations? Are you moving toward it? Learning, growing, progressing, even if slowly, even if imperfectly? Then success is not something you're waiting for. It's something you're living. Here is what you now know. Your fear of defeat was fear of a phantom. The defeat you dreaded was defined into existence by a flawed understanding. Remove that understanding, and defeat, as you conceived it, ceases to exist. Success has been available to you all along, not as a future possibility requiring certain conditions, as a present reality experienced in every moment of purposeful progress. The boardrooms of the world will keep measuring by the old definition. The masses will keep announcing winners and losers based on arrival at destinations. Let them. You know something they haven't discovered yet. The only true defeat is surrender, and even that can be reversed the moment you begin again. Everything else, the setbacks, the obstacles, the slow progress, the learning, the growing, everything else is success happening. Start today, not tomorrow, not when conditions improve, not when you feel ready. Today, set your course toward something worthy, something that matters to you, something that serves others. Take one step. Feel what happens when you understand that the step itself, not some distant destination, is where success lives. You have nothing to lose but your fear, and you have your whole life to win.